Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
approved. Public comment. Do we have any general public comment this morning? Okay. Seeing none, we will close public comment and move to the electric rate study RFP, committee ranking and recommendations.
As you know, back when we talked about the SWOT analysis of the various rate reduction recommendations, one of the things that we were tasked with doing was putting out an RFP for a rate study, not just a rate sufficiency study, but a rate structure study. That RFP was reviewed by this committee, was released back in August. We received 6 proposals. The evaluation committee consisted of myself, Tom Richards, the utility director, and Janet Roberts, our customer service manager. From the 6 proposals, we chose 3 firms that we had oral interviews with, and based on those interviews and our previous scores, we ended up ranking Public Resources and Management Group, or PRMG, as our #1 ranked firm. They have extensive experience with Florida municipal utilities as well as with the city. They were the ones that conducted our last study back in 2009. As a result of that, we felt they were extremely qualified and also very up to speed on the various issues facing the city. It turns out that the price they proposed was actually the least expensive of all of the proposals as well, probably in part because they have already constructed a model at one point that reflects the city's budget and general ledger. So with that, what we're asking is that this committee endorse our recommendation to the council that we award this contract for the rate study to PRMG. We'd like to put that before council on November the 4th, get them on contract as quickly as possible with the idea of having a rate study completed in about 4 months, 3 to 4 months, for the initial briefings that they would come and give to the various commissions regarding their findings.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Cindy, or Tom is here too as well?
Yeah.
I have one if I could. Remind me, when they did the last study, which was in
2009, and actually the rates were adopted in January of 2010 from that study.
And were the rates adopted in accordance with the recommendations in the study?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, if you've seen the current PSC sheets that we have filed that show that 5 years' worth of rates, those were in accordance with that study. And there was some modification both to the rate structure and to the rates at that time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do you want a resolution to go ahead with it, or what do you want us to do?
A vote would be good. Again, the vote would be you, the committee, affirming our committee's recommendation to the council that we award this contract to PRMG.
Hopefully that's what the vote would be. But
Well,
yeah,
that would be the motion.
that would be the motion. And we'll I think we'll make that motion when we're done with just the general discussion. I would like you, though, to go into the difference, just for the record and for the public, between the rate sufficiency study that we do internally quarterly and this rate study. This is a rate structure study. So if you could expound on that a little bit, just so that people would understand that we're not paying for something that we already do.
It is a combination of both. The rate sufficiency that we do every quarter is a 1-year rate sufficiency snapshot in time, updated quarterly to show where we stand with regard to actuals, and is really focused on rate making on a quarter-by-quarter basis and on an annual basis. So the PRMG study will include a rate sufficiency component, but it'll be a 5-year forecast that shows a 5-year plan for stabilization of rates, keeping our unrestricted cash in the proper place, et cetera. More importantly, the study, though, in the scope also includes a look at our rate structure. For instance, and we've talked about this, the city's rates have a sharp breakpoint at 1,000 kilowatt hours for residential customers, where the rate almost doubles for consumption. Is that the right way to do it, or is there another approach? Things like that, demand charges and other things that we have a certain way. Nobody's looked at our customer demographics since 2009, when this study was done before. So it'll be a checkup on that, and also there were some specific things that the utility director and I asked them to have a look at with regard to the structure. The other thing that's been some discussion with this committee and with the Finance Commission is funding of capital through rates versus borrowing. And one of the specific requests in the RFP is that they have a look at that and give us some recommendations based on industry practices as to how we should proceed to fund our 5-year capital plan. So it is more focused on structure, and even in the rate sufficiency side, it is a multi-year forecast and not the single snapshot in time that we do right now.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, should I please? After reading the paper this morning, it's conceivable that there'll be a number of variables that may have taken place or will take place during, prior, after the study begins. So I guess my question would be, do you feel confident about undertaking this today? Is the timing, given these new circumstances, proper, or should it perhaps be delayed a few months until there is a resolution of the question as to whether or not there will be reductions in the cost of electricity for the residents? It's just a question that crossed my mind as I began to listen to you and think about what I read in the paper today. Do you have any reaction to that, or does Jim have any reaction to that?
I do. Actually, I think it's extremely appropriate timing, because if there is to be a rate reduction, I would rather see it based on a rate sufficiency, rate structure model prepared by an outside consultant that looks at the 5-year projection, rather than having it be based solely on my single year snapshot in time, quarter by quarter projection. The second thing is that the major part of this study is to construct a model that includes good data on the city's demographics, and then is able to be rerun, if you will, depending on any different set of circumstances in the city's costs. So the model itself, the construct of the model, remains the same. And as a matter of fact, one of the tasks in the RFP was for them to be prepared, once they constructed a model on the status quo, to work with our optimization consultant to fold any cost savings that came out of that into the model to see what it would do to rates. So actually, I think the timing is really good. I wish it was already done, but I think the timing is excellent, because I'd like to see them be part of the effort of really fixing the rates in a proper place once we implement these other things.
Thank you.
It's a good question, but yeah,
Okay.
that's all.
Any,
I don't know if Jim wants to add to that, or
George?
you good?
What provisions do you have, or do they anticipate, for adjusting the model over time as circumstances change? In other words, if, say, in 2 years' time we find there's been a significant change in the demographics, which would skew the model one way or the other, do we have any provision for going back and reviewing that and making further adjustments, or do we just stick with that model for 5 years?
Actually, that's an excellent question. Last time, for whatever reason, we put them on contract. They did a model. They gave it to us, and that was the end of our relationship with them. And here we are 5, almost 6 years later. What we put in this RFP was that we would like to have them have a continuing relationship with the city. If they create this 5-year model, rather than me comparing it to actuals on a quarterly or annual basis, I'd like for them to update it based on what's really going on and make the necessary adjustments as we go along, so that they maintain an ongoing participation in our rate making and in whether our rates are achieving the targets they set in that 5-year plan. So that was in the RFP.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Is that taken care of in a upfront cost, or do we have a standard charge every year to do that?
We asked them to bid only a not to exceed for the initial study, including some meetings. We put that in as extra scope to be negotiated, and we asked them to give us their hourly rates. But if we established a regular cycle for that, I'd see us negotiating another flat price for that, to either do it quarterly or biannually.
But at least we do have hourly rates.
We do have hourly
rates. Would be
rates.
applied over 5 years?
If we asked them to do anything else, we could just apply the hourly rates that they proposed. Yeah.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, Herb, you were ready to make a motion a few minutes ago?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve and ask the City Council to approve the rate RFP for the rate study.
And I'll second the motion. Any further discussion on the motion?
If I could specifically to award it to PRMG, is that to Public Resources Management Group
To
specifically?
accept
our
staff's recommendation on the RFP.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. And then the next thing on the agenda, we have an ordinance and a resolution regarding the STEP system. And, excuse me, Tom, would you mind, are you able to wait a little bit? Okay, we're going to be circling back to the utilities. Thank you.
That's right.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rob Bolton, Water and Sewer Director. In front of you today is both a ordinance and a resolution for what we've been working on for about the last 2 years, and that is a STEP system, septic tank effluent pump. Is there anybody here that is not familiar with the system that we're talking about? Good. So I prepared a little quick PowerPoint that I was going to go through that hits the highlights of both the ordinance and the resolution. I don't know if you had time to review it, and there's been, from the original onset, there was one that was put out, and then Wayne discovered some typos, a little bit of formatting issues, so he reissued new ones that I think you have. So with that, I'm going to walk through this, if you don't mind. Going to council after your review and comment period, tonight we will have the first reading and placing time and a place for the public hearings for both this ordinance and the resolution. So if there's any comments by the commission today, I will put them in writing and announce them tonight at the city council meeting. So the ordinance does a few things. It modifies a section of our code called Chapter 78, which is utilities. In Chapter 78 exists our wastewater sanitary sewer ordinance. And one of the things that the ordinance does, it'll require a mandatory pump out and inspection of existing septic tanks on a 5-year basis. So it'll also establish the STEP system program itself with all the rules and regulations. And then it will also require private wastewater systems where there's grinder stations or some type of a private system that exists on private property to, there'll be language added that where they're required to maintain their systems in accordance with their original permit requirements that came from DEP. So I was going to go through the ordinance step by step, and in section 7861, there's a little bit of change for the purpose and the policy of the ordinance itself to define the STEP system. Under definitions, there were some upgrades that we did under building drain and building sewer to reflect new plumbing code languages. We added new definitions for the low pressure sewage collection system, pump panel, pump vault, STEP system itself, and STEP system application. Under 7864, we updated language to reflect Florida Statute 381.0065. The code still reflected old Florida statutes and hadn't been revised over time. Under the private wastewater disposal and STEP system in 7883, this is where I talked about there's going to be a 5-year mandatory pump out and inspection. So this will commence in 2016 From there, people have 5 years to pump out and inspect their system. So really, they're not required to submit any paperwork until December 31st of 2020. Yeah.
If they have a pump out in that 5-year period, would they have to then have an inspection?
After January 1st of 2016, they will have to have it inspected.
Okay.
So between now and January 1st of 2016, they can just get a pump out. They won't have to have it inspected. The difference for an inspection versus just a pump out is about $75. So, but after January 1st, 2016, when they call somebody in to pump them out, they will be doing an inspection at the same time, submitting that paperwork to the city.
When you say private system, are you including households or?
Private wastewater disposal is another term for a septic system on somebody's property or an on-site sewage and disposal system. Our code called it private wastewater disposal. So instead of completely going in and revising all of the code and changing all the terminology, we left the terminology of a private wastewater disposal system.
So in my house, it would be the pump and the tank.
What we're talking about is the if you are on a septic system, it'll be the septic tank and drain field. You're right.
Rob, today, what's the requirement for people with septic systems?
Nothing.
And quickly, how will you intend to monitor this 5-year rolling requirement?
Well, after January 1st, 2016, when, say, on January 2nd, you call somebody in to pump out your system, they're going to pump it out and fill out a inspection report that we've already prepared. That inspection report, then they will be required to file with us within 10 days of pumping out the septic tank. So then we will get that report. We will use our GIS department to populate the maps and keep track of who's actually turned in the paperwork. So sometime around November or September or October of 2020, we will then take everybody that pumped it out and create a mailing list of those that didn't and say, by the way, in accordance with our code, you were supposed to have your system pumped out by December 31st of 2016. We're letting you know you still have 90 days or 45 days or whatever it is to come into compliance with our city code.
Essentially, you know today everybody in the city that has a septic tank.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then we will populate that data field with the reports that come in from the private wastewater.
And the penalties for noncompliance are?
It would be a code issue. So in the case of this, you would go in front of code enforcement for it. There's other penalties for, in this code, say for shutting off the electric on the step system. You would either go through code enforcement all the way up through turning your water off if you're creating a sanitary hazard. So for this case, we would go through the code enforcement board, which would be, a $50 first-time fine or something to that effect.
Why are we waiting until 2016?
Well, that was kind of me because right now we're coming up on January 1st of 2015, and I figure it's going to take us roughly a year to get everything permitted and get our construction activity moving forward. And if I have everybody going out and pumping out their septic systems and filling out those reports and they're having failures, then I'll be jumping all over the city trying to install and hook people up versus doing it in some type of an orderly fashion. But that's up to this commission. If they feel they want to accelerate that to a different date, we're open to suggestions. But that was just my first thought process.
No, I think if somebody's septic tank is broken, they should fix it.
Okay. That could be a recommendation from this board.
What provision is there for monitoring? In other words, you get a report that someone's septic tank has defects of one kind or another. Do they have a time frame in which to repair, and then are they required to have a reinspection to verify that it's done? And if they don't do it, what happens then?
typically what happens is if a septic tank contractor goes out to their property and finds that there's a fault with their septic system, they're going to notify the homeowner, and the homeowner is going to have to take action. They would then go to permit the remediation through the health department. In this case, where once the SEP system's in and they go to permit it, there won't be the issuance of a permit. The health department's going to say, well, you need to go ahead and hook up to the city's STEP system. In the case where if we don't have lines there and you have something going on, either we're going to have to mobilize quickly to try to hook these individuals up, or they're going to have the ability to permit without the STEP system and take the corrective actions and get a permit for replacement of their septic tank drain field at this time, or whatever else is wrong with their system. So the actual report itself and the septic tank contractor letting them know that they're in violation of Florida statutes by it not operating correctly. You kind of have them as the initial, and then they're going to turn it into us. We're going to notify the people, hey, you need to take corrective action. If they don't, then we would turn it over to the health department, and they would take action. So they have the right to evict people from their homes if they're creating a sanitary hazard.
Okay.
Any more on the pump out? No? Under the Chapter 78, Section B, which we have added, I'm just hitting the highlights here. There'll be an application required. So somebody will come in, fill out an application, they'll pay their necessary fees, and then they'll hire their contractor. Probably they'll hire the contractor before they fill out the application to perform the installation. Under Section 2, we define the responsibilities of the city and the responsibilities of the property owner. Under Section 3, we define the operation and maintenance requirements of both the city and the property owner. Under Section 4, it identifies responsibility if a property owner wants to move a STEP system, so or somebody's putting an addition on a house or tearing the house down or something. It would be their financial responsibility to relocate it on their property. And then Section 5 provides and establishes a 5-foot easement around all the components of the STEP system for maintenance purposes. And then Section 6 is the city's indemnification language. Okay, under private wastewater collection and transmission systems, when we started the permitting process for the STEP system, the Department of Environmental Protection, South District, which we started operating under roughly, coming up on 2 years now, they started issuing permits, and they wanted us to add language into our code that requires anybody that has a permit through them, since they do not have a compliance section, that we now become the compliance section for the Department of Environmental Protection. We went ahead and altered some existing code that we had, still under the Chapter 78, to require them to perform maintenance activities and document reports and maintain files for the operation and maintenance so that they don't have any sanitary sewer overflows. In Section E, it establishes a 90-day requirement to make repairs. So if a contractor who they contract with, a service provider, again, finds a problem, identifies it to the owner, they then have 90 days to take corrective action on that.
Rob, I've got a question. When this process is ongoing, someone starts the whole process of application and inspection and et cetera, is there a provision in there for the real estate folks regarding change of ownership? Somebody can be starting this process and all of a sudden they're selling their house. I mean, does this get involved in the liens of who's paid for what and what is still due and that kind of stuff?
You'll have probably two chances where it would affect the real estate situation. The first would be where they're not hooked up to our system, and they go to sell their house. A lot of times what will happen is when they go to sell their house, they'll, the person purchasing it or someone will have a threshold inspection performed. A lot of times during the threshold inspections, the process that they do, they require a pump out. So in this case, they would pump it out and do an inspection. And if it was to come back that there was problems with the septic system, then they would have to negotiate between the two owners to connect to the city's step system. The second scenario would be when someone has signed up and is making payments for the step system under our payment program. And in those cases, that lien would have to be satisfied as part of the closing costs for the sale, through the title company. So those two scenarios is the only two that I see this time. So back to this on the private wastewater, we added a non-compliance section that if someone is not maintaining their system and causing sanitary sewer overflows or in hazards, that we have the right to shut off water to their property. The resolution establishes priority basins. You remember I came back to you a couple months ago when we first came up with the Bethel Creek area. Since that time, we've taken that same map and we have established the basins that we will be doing the engineering and the installation of the lines in. So first you have the Bethel Creek area, and then according to Mark, what is it called? Bethel by the Sea is the going name for this area, and then you have the Ria Mar and area over here, and then stuff along the mainland. We've started the zones based on both the density and age of the homes plus the proximity to the water, and that's how we came up with the different basins to move forward with.
Rob, and as you start this implementation period, and I've forgotten whether or not this cost, and perhaps you could refresh us in terms of what the cost of the early implementation or continuing implementation will be. And has that been plugged into the current financial plan, or is this something that is a new cost that will have to be dealt with by the City Council?
The cost was roughly $900,000 to install the lines throughout the city, the entire city itself. And during the budget process this year, the City Council appropriated $500,000 for this fiscal year and $500,000 for next fiscal year. So we have the money to get started with the program. If we probably come up to where we're spending more, we will probably go back to council instead of slowing the process down, probably ask for, we have the funds in the bank, it's just they've been appropriated over 2 fiscal years. So under the Step Up and Save incentive program, the Step Up and Save credit of $2,290 for a property owner that signs up within 12 months of notification from the city. So the city will install the lines, then send out notification to everybody via mail, certified mail, stating that the lines are now available for a connection. That will start the clock. They will have 12 months at that point to come in and sign up. If they sign up, then they'll receive a $2,290 credit. If they pay cash, they will receive another $1,100 credit on top of the $2,290 credit. If they choose to finance, then they will still receive the $2,290 credit, but they won't receive the $1,100 credit. However, they will receive financing over a 10-year period at 0 interest. If they choose to not connect in the first 12 months, there's no incentive.
Mr. Chairman, I think we could probably all agree that the incentive represents a subsidy by the city. And have you planned on the way to cover the cost related to that subsidy? And that will be quickly?
Yeah, the $2,290 is the impact fee. So that we normally would charge for connection to the wastewater plant. Our plant is paid for. We still do have some outstanding financing that we work through our rates. However, we never anticipated these connections for future growth or anything else. We have the capacity in our plant to pay for it. So we looked at a way of, getting more customers online that's going to pay for the retirement of the rest of the debt, that it was a good financial and also environmental benefit to all the residents that are within the city limits to offer some type of a credit. The other, which is the wastewater utility credit of the $1,100, that is the cost of the line that was in the street, the 2-inch line and the 1-inch service to the property. That's the $1 million that we're putting in the rates, which we do have the funds available. I don't know what the sign-up rate's going to be. The City of Stewart had a sign-up program, and they've been experiencing almost 60%, somewhere around 55 to 58% of the people signed up, through that credit program. So that's really good. However, they were doing it at the time when there was a heightened alert of the river and the lagoon. If the lagoon becomes more healthy, then those impulsive people that are coming in and signing up because they feel like they're doing the right thing, some of them won't be showing up to sign up for such a program. Those that have been suffering with septic systems that have been failing and sluggish for years, they probably will take advantage of this type of situation. So we're not borrowing any money to pay for this. You will have a certain rate of return when you have more customers coming in and paying monthly bills. So, part of it is a giveaway program.
It sounded to me initially, the way you presented this, that you would be incurring more debt. He's now said that that's not true. This will be basically coming out of the operating budgets of the entity. Is that, and I'm looking at the CFO too.
There's no new debt in the budget to cover the capital program that was appropriated.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions about the cost. The average total cost to the homeowner?
If you wait a minute, I'll get to that a little bit.
Oh, okay. Also about, and this may not be the proper time, about the maintenance and who takes care of it, and also a third item, just get them out to you. I take it you're going to have a list of approved contractors and so on, and so when we get our notice, we'll also have a list of who we can call to get this done?
Yes, anyone that is a licensed, and I'll kind of go backwards in reverse. Anyone that is a licensed septic tank contractor or certain plumbers can perform the tasks, and we have I have the list. The list is available through the Department of Health on their website of anybody within Indian River County. So you could do Indian River County, Brevard County, St. Lucie County, but we will have a list of individuals that they can contact for first the pump out. If they're going to be doing a pump out, then it needs to be a licensed septic tank contractor. In the case of the installation, plumbers or licensed septic tank contractors can perform a lot of those tasks. Some are duly licensed. But we will have a list of that. Your other question is the maintenance. There are kind of two types of systems. Type 1 that we have is the original hybrid system that we talked about, and that is where you leave a septic tank in place and you just put a little pump basin. That pump basin, the pumps, the line to the street, all the lines in the street, the electrical system up to the panel will all be maintained by the city itself, along with the pump outs of the septic tank that's on the property. The homeowner is responsible for the electric, providing the electric to the panel, and maintaining the plumbing system within the home and from the home to the septic tank and the septic tank itself. Type 2 is the cases where the septic tank may be a failure. Some of them that if somebody still has a septic tank from the 1950s, they didn't have bottoms in them. So in those cases, we're not going to be able to utilize that septic system. So therefore, it would have to be replaced. In that case, when they replace the septic tank, that new tank, along with all the components that I described before, will all be maintained by the city. So in those cases, the homeowner would only be responsible for the internal electric to the panel, and then also their plumbing system within their house, and the short distance out to the new septic tank that's installed.
So it's pretty light for the...
Very light for the homeowner.
Maintenance.
Yes.
Other than providing electricity.
And that was part of it. I mean, if you look at a normal sanitary sewer customer, they're responsible for their plumbing within their house and the line out to the street. We take on all the other responsibility. So we remove effluent and waste and everything else, treat it all, and dispose of it. We wanted to make sure that the person on the step system was receiving like-kind type maintenance from the city. So we will be responsible for pumping out the septic tank and taking care of the pumps and everything on the property itself.
On 2 occasions in the past, I've had to have a pump station to lift. Mm-hmm. And we had to install that, maintain it. It was all ours.
Yes.
And this sounds like almost a giveaway compared to that.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to get to your pricing. Under the Type 1 scenario, so the Type 1 is for a customer that will leave their existing septic tank in place and install an external pump basin. This is the draft of the application, a very simple application. The homeowner would fill out some information. They would get a copy and initial that they got a copy of our Code of Ordinances. And then here is how the fee system would work. So the first charge would be the wastewater utility extension charge, which was for the 2-inch line and the 1-inch service line coming up to their property. So that would have been $1,100. The second would be the wastewater impact fee, which was $2,290. The equipment then, in this case, you would have a PVC pump basin that is $500, and then the rest of the pump panel package and the vault and the panel itself is $2,275. So the total equipment cost is $2,775. You would then, if you signed up within the first 12 months, receive credits. So you would get your Step Up and Save credit of $2,290, and you would also get your wastewater utility extension credit if you paid cash of $1,100. So therefore, your total cost to the city would be $2,775. You then would hire your septic tank contractor, who the typical installation we're looking at is roughly $2,500 to the septic tank contractor. And under the septic tank contractor, you normally would have an electrician. Those costs are estimated at roughly $500. So you have $3,000, and you would have an $80 electrical permit that you would have to pull. So the newspaper today, I'm going off of their math, which I believe is right, has quoted that the cost to the homeowner will be $5,855. Now, under your Step 2, Type 2, similar, however, you would have to replace the septic tank. At this time, I only have pricing on poly tanks, so that's what I'm going to show what our estimates are. Instead of the PVC pump basin at $500, you would have a 1,000-gallon septic tank at $950 for a 3-bedroom house or less. If you are a 4- and 5-bedroom house, you would have a 1,500-gallon tank that would be required. You would still have the same pump package of the $2,275, so therefore you would have a cost of $3,225. So it's roughly $450 more for the replacement of the septic system package, the septic tank itself. We estimate that the additional cost of the contractor, instead of $2,500, you're looking at probably $3,000. Same electrical costs, so roughly $1,000 more for the replacement of the whole system itself. However, the homeowner then has no more responsibility whatsoever. If you have left your septic tank system in place, and then we go out and do a pump out and do our inspection, and now there's problems with it, they would have to replace that septic tank sometime in the future. So I'm hoping a lot of homeowners take advantage of this type of system and just replace everything with new.
And generally, what would be the cost of just a repair to your
Funny you
septic?
ask
If you
that.
need a new drain field,
I just got a call. We've been working with a septic tank contractor on 2 projects in the Bethel Creek area. One is a 6-unit apartment complex that actually should have never been permitted, but they were permitted because they thought they were only one-bedroom units, and when they found out that they were 2-bedroom units, the drain field, the whole entire system that's on the property now is inadequate. So they were going to be forced with either putting in a grinder pump station or putting in a step system. The grinder pump stations, there was a bid for one just around the corner from them, and they were roughly $29,000 to $40,000 for the installation of a grinder pump station for a commercial complex. Our cost for the equipment, tank, everything was $8,000. Now, I don't know what the installation cost was going to be because I didn't talk to the contractor about that cost, but you could see a significant decrease in just the equipment side of things. The same septic tank contractor is working on a house at the end of Bahiamar that has a failing septic system. Nobody is in the house at this time, but they're getting ready to come down for the winter. And he told me yesterday on the phone, both these 2 want to hook up, so we'll be ordering the equipment for them. But he told me that the septic tank, this drain field replacement and all that was needed for that house, the single-family house, was $6,200. So this was actually a little bit cheaper than it. And the homeowner was pleased that they would be on sewer and no longer having to worry about the septic system. So that's your comparable. And that's just from what I'm in discussion with people on.
so anecdotally, half. Just in this one case, it was about.
In the case of the apartment complex, it's half. In the case of the drain field and everything else with installation, the $6,200 was the contractor doing the whole entire installation. Okay. In this case, it was, a little less to do the hook up to the step system than it was to replace the drain field. And that was our whole goal. I mean, that was what we were trying to do, was get to something that was comparable in cost to a drain field system repair that somebody would be faced with in the future.
Okay.
Any questions?
Do we have any other questions?
Do we do rate sufficiency for the water and sewage utility? Or have we?
I believe there was wasn't there one done by PRMG?
The PRMG did the rate sufficiency and analysis, and they had increases that they had proposed, and then we implemented the optimization program, and we froze our rates at that current point. I've done one every year myself, and I could share that with you, or we could. I mean, we're way below what our projected expenditures were going to be, and then our rates are definitely sufficient for what we're doing. If you look at the last, even with funding the step system, this year's budget is what, $900,000 in additional cash that'll go into reserves by the time our budget.
You'll be able to cover all the development costs and operating costs associated with the policy with the current rates.
Yes.
Then on top of it, for a large number of our customers, we've actually
Cindy.
tied our.
That's all right.
I thought I could get away with it. Thanks, Sharon. For a large number of our customers, we've actually tied our rates to the county rate structure as well, and so that's part of the reason that we're not modifying our own.
Thank you.
All
Okay.
right.
There's no other questions? Yes, Bill.
Rob, the rates that the city charges for wastewater disposal to the homeowner, will they be the same as the current customers, or will there be differential between the two, this system versus the gravity feed system?
For someone that hooks up and puts one step system on their property, it would be the same exact rate structure. If they put two step systems on their property, which we really don't want them to, usually with plumbing changes they can just install one, but if for some reason they have to install two of them, then they would receive two base rates but just one commodity charge based on usage for the usage itself. So if a homeowner uses 5,000 or 6,000 gallons and their bill is roughly I'd say $38 or $39 on the gravity sewer side, then they on a step system they would pay the same bill. If the person had two step systems on their property, they would receive another bill, an additional charge of about $19.40 a month because of the cost of maintenance on that additional pump system that's on that property.
Okay, one more question.
Mm-hmm.
The electrical requirement for the step system, as the systems become available to city residents, is there a more of a dependency on electrical power as far as the city in case of outages? Is that, how's that handled when as you transition neighborhoods to this system from the I'm talking people that have septic systems.
That was one of the reasons why we pushed so hard to leave the drain fields in place. So if there was a power outage, the drain field would be there as a backup. So in the case of the step system, the tank would fill up. It's still connected to the drain field with a check valve in place. So the drain field doesn't pour back into the pump tank, but once it filled up, it would go out into the drain field for those short times that you would have extended power outages.
Will there be a requirement for those drain fields to remain in place?
It's not required.
Okay.
So
because as you know, recently the drain fields on the island are above ground and creating an issue in most people's yards for those, like an Indian mound out there. So. Right.
For the people that have the Indian mound and want to get rid of the Indian mound, we would require you to put in a little bit larger tank, so it would be the 500-gallon tank, which is roughly about $150 more. So that gives you enough capacity then for those power outages. The panels also are equipped with emergency generator connections, so anybody that has a generator that's 2,500 watts or larger can plug into it and turn one switch and it would pump it down. So very simple. It's strange because our DEP was like, oh, you can't let homeowners do it, but if you look at South Alabama Utilities that's hurricane prone just like us, they have right on their webpage and they send out to the homeowners step by step on how to hook up their own generator to connect. And anybody that hooked up their generator, it's very easy to install and hook up to this.
I think publicizing, making those options known is probably a real good idea as it applies to
the Indian mound.
People on the island.
Yeah, a lot of people want to get rid of that mound out of their yard. So, but there's options for that. We definitely have options for those systems. And you're going to have some people that want to put a pool in and the drain field is in the way. So that option's available for them also.
Okay. Mark, do you have a comment?
Mark Mucher, 617 Indian Lilac Road. I've got a question and maybe a comment. I think this is a great program, but I have a little problem with the way it's structured. This step up and save incentive to do it in the first year is basically waiving the impact fee, and it's not exactly presented that way, but on cross-examination it's explained that way. And two things. I would argue that the impact fee is unnecessary and probably illegal, and I would challenge that if it was structured that way. But the other thing is, I just recently got a new drain field and all the inspections and everything, and so there's really no reason for me to hook up in the first 12 months. But if I don't, then I'm going to be hit with this possibly illegal impact fee of $2,300, which is a big chunk of change, almost 50% of the total. So, I just want to protest against that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just picking up on that, that's a sort of a severe penalty for the people who've just have gone through the work and the cost of putting in a new drain field, and then wanting to support the step system and ultimately move in that direction. The cost doubles because they're going to get past that first year. It needs to be cut and dried, no exceptions, Rob.
We don't live in a perfect world, and I would say you have to have some type of a cutoff date for the program. Otherwise, there's no incentive. So in the case of somebody that just went through the process and installed a new drain field and everything else, they're going to benefit by not having to hook up. If their system's good for 15 more years, then it's good for 15 more years, and they're not going to pay a monthly bill or anything else, and so they have a savings there. Those that feel that they're teetering on or could be a problem, and they're an older home and their drain field isn't up to the new standards, those would have an incentive now to hook up.
Good point.
Hi, I'm Dan Lamson, the Executive Director of the Indian River Neighborhood Association. I have a short statement to read on this subject. The Indian River Neighborhood Association strongly supports the proposal of the city's Director of Utilities, Rob Bolton, to install a hybrid sewer collection system. Our organization has appeared before this body on several occasions, citing the problems of deteriorating water quality of the lagoon. We appreciate the efforts of Vero in approving a strong fertilizer ordinance to protect the lagoon from the nitrogen and phosphorus in fertilizers. At the time it was adopted, it was known that controlling pollution from these sources was only part of the effort needed to restore the lagoon. A critical next effort is to limit greatly, or if not stop entirely, leakage from individual septic systems. Scientists have not been able to provide those of us working to protect the lagoon with all the statistics we would like to have indicating which source of pollution is the most serious: fertilizers, septic leakage, or road runoff, or something else we might not know about. So we have to proceed on the assumption that a full effort must be undertaken to control all three of these contributors if we are to protect this body of water. Our organization congratulates the Director of Public Utilities in having brought forward a sewer collection system that can save money for the city and property owners and save the disruption that major sewage lines involve. We appreciate that it was not easy to bring this project forward, ready for your approval. The permit process alone was surely a major effort. While we are more than ready for all of the septic systems in the city to be converted to a central collection system, we support this proposal before you to initiate installation of the step system in the Bethel Creek area. This peninsula surrounded by the lagoon and contiguous properties are surely an appropriate choice for launching this project because of the likelihood of their contribution to pollution into nearby waters. We cannot close our endorsement of this project without expressing one regret: that the city intends to allow property owners to decide whether they will or will not utilize this faculty. We urge you to reconsider your opposition to making connections mandatory. This is the only way the system can be as effective as it intended, and it is the only way it can be financially practical for the city to make this investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions for Rob?
I have one for, wait a minute. Oh, I lost it in the process. I'm sorry, I think I forgot while we were going over this other stuff.
Then we need a motion to...
Yeah, I would, like I started this conversation off, something for council tonight, a statement of endorsement or other comments or anything that you have, any changes that you all as a group feel strongly about, and now would be the time so that we can relay them to the council tonight.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, excuse me, I remembered. Where are we in state approvals and things like that? We were going through a lot of that, I know. Is that all settled now?
Yes, the Department of Environmental Protection, after the whole process we went through to try to get the state Florida statutes changed, the governor was able to have his staffing sit down and come up with ways that we could move the projects forward. So initially we thought we would just be able to do just a pilot project. However, they've opened the doors to allow us to do the whole sewering with the step system of the entire city. We started with the Bethel Creek area, and we're under design now for Bethel by the Sea and some other areas to get everything moving forward.
When you say Bethel Creek, because I happen to live there, is that 1 and 2, or just 1?
The Bethel Creek up top, everything that is
What you're
Cache K
talking-
North.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
Go back.
I'll move that we support resolution number 214 as written and submit it to the city council for approval.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Bob, did you see the Bethel Creek area there?
Sure.
Your questions answered there on the map?
Yeah, Bethel Creek area 1 is the first area we're going to, and then 2 is the next area.
Just 1 at this.
Just 1 at this time is what we're permitted for.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. We have discussion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
And that was for the resolution? Do you want one for the ordinance too, or?
Resolution and the ordinance.
I'll amend that if it's required, resolution number 214 and ordinance.
I'll second.
Okay, we have an amendment to the motion. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Again, that passes unanimously. And that's everything you have, Rob? Okay, great. There's a memo that came out last night from Mr. Wright, who's here this morning, about the negotiations with the OUC. I received it late in the evening, and Mr. Wright's here today. Jim's here today, so I don't know if some of us, I think, just got it this morning, and if I'd be willing to, we need a short adjournment to take a look at it. We can adjourn for 5 minutes or.
Well, I got one question for Tom off of it.
Well, is it on the, Herb, is it on the?
It's included in here.
Okay, and I've just made a suggestion that we give a 5-minute recess so that the other members might have a chance to read that and then could have an intelligent conversation with you and Tom. So.
I would like to have that.
Okay, all right.
Opportunity.
So it's 10:59. Is 5 minutes enough, or do we want 10?
5.
5. All right, we're going to come back together at 11:05.